You're looking at copies of the order of protection requested by 29-year-old Taylor McFadden Robinson, filed against her husband, Duncan Robinson Jr. Police say Robinson killed his wife of 7 years Sunday morning at her home in Florence. Her family is just devastated.
A security camera notification pinged on Taylor McFadden Robinson's phone. Her heart sank as she watched the footage, her estranged husband, Duncan Robinson Jr., approaching her front door. The same door he had kicked repeatedly just months earlier. The same man who had tried to run her over with his car. The same threat she had begged the court to protect her from. Welcome to Shadows of Crime. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button to join our community as we examine cases that expose the darkest corners of our justice system. Today's story will leave you questioning how many lives could be saved if we simply listened to victims. The first time, January 23, 2022, began like any other Sunday in Florence, South Carolina. Taylor, a 29-year-old rising star in real estate and owner of multiple businesses, was home on Rice Planters Lane in the Live Oak Plantation neighborhood. What happened next would forever change the lives of her two young sons, Damari and Caden, who witnessed something no child should ever see. 10 months earlier, Taylor had stood before a judge with documented evidence of Duncan's escalating behavior. "He broke my back door after kicking it repeatedly," she wrote in her petition. "He tried to run me over with his car." Her words, clear and urgent, painted the portrait of a woman in danger. The judge's response? Failure to prove facts of alleged abuse. The petition was denied. The differences, according to court records, appeared to be over children. Taylor was simply advised to get attorneys and file divorce action. She did exactly that. A final divorce hearing was scheduled for February 7, 2022. A hearing Taylor would never attend. As a successful entrepreneur who had worked her way up from a Wells Fargo teller to owning Pretty Little Princess Nail Salon and founding Moving Up LLC, Taylor was accustomed to overcoming obstacles. Known affectionately as Tay-Tay or Baby Cakes to those who loved her, she had built a reputation as someone who created opportunities not just for herself, but for her children and community. But on that January morning, all her careful planning, all her documented fears, all her success and determination couldn't protect her from what the surveillance system in her home would capture next. "The system has failed us," her sister Anastasia McFadden would later tell the court. "My sister asked for a restraining order and the judge denied it. Please do not allow the system to fail us again." What exactly did that home surveillance system record in Taylor's final moments? What evidence would Assistant Solicitor Todd Tucker later describe as heinous? And how did a woman who did everything right to protect herself end up with a gunshot wound to the head while her children watched? The answers reveal not just one man's violence, but an entire system's failure. Taylor's journey from her roots in Florence, South Carolina, to becoming a multifaceted entrepreneur exemplifies determination, vision, and unwavering dedication to family and community. Born and raised in Florence, South Carolina, Taylor grew up in a close-knit family that instilled in her the values of hard work and perseverance. Her upbringing in this vibrant Southern community shaped her strong sense of community connection and service. Family gatherings, local traditions, and the supportive network of her hometown provided Taylor with a solid foundation that would later fuel her professional endeavors and entrepreneurial spirit. Taylor's academic path took her through the educational systems of both Williamsburg County and Florence County schools. Throughout her schooling, she demonstrated exceptional aptitude and determination, often balancing academic responsibilities with extracurricular activities that developed her leadership skills. Her education wasn't confined to the classroom. She actively sought opportunities to expand her knowledge, particularly in areas that would later become central to her business ventures. Taylor's professional career began at Wells Fargo, where she worked as a teller. This position provided her with valuable insights into financial management and customer service, skills that would prove invaluable in her future endeavors. Her attention to detail, reliability, and natural ability to connect with clients quickly set her apart. These early professional experiences laid the groundwork for her transition into real estate, where she found her true calling and achieved remarkable success through dedication and client-focused service. Taylor's entrepreneurial journey showcases her versatility and business acumen. Her success with United Real Estate established her reputation in the property market, where she developed a knack for matching clients with their ideal properties while navigating complex transactions with expertise. Not content with success in a single industry, Taylor expanded her business portfolio by founding Pretty Little Princess Nail Salon, creating a space that combines quality service with a welcoming atmosphere. Her establishment of Moving Up, LLC, further demonstrates her ability to identify market needs and develop solutions that serve her community, while building sustainable business models. At the heart of Taylor's drive is her profound dedication to her sons, Damari and Caden. She has masterfully balanced the demands of entrepreneurship with the responsibilities of motherhood, ensuring her sons receive not only her love and attention, but also valuable life lessons. Taylor has intentionally involved her children in her business activities, teaching them the principles of entrepreneurship from an early age. Through her example, she instills in them the importance of work ethic, financial literacy, and pursuing their passions with determination. Taylor's warm personality, characterized by authenticity and compassion, has been instrumental in both her business success and community impact. She approaches challenges with optimism and resilience, inspiring those around her to persevere through difficulties. Her commitment to community extends beyond her business ventures. She actively participates in local initiatives, mentors aspiring entrepreneurs, and creates opportunities for others to succeed. Taylor's generosity with her time, knowledge, and resources has made her a respected figure whose influence extends far beyond her professional achievements. Taylor's life story illustrates how determination, coupled with a clear vision and genuine care for others, can lead to success across multiple domains. From her beginnings in Florence to her current status as a successful entrepreneur and devoted mother, she continues to build a legacy defined by excellence, innovation, and positive community impact. Her journey serves as an inspiration to those around her, demonstrating that with passion and perseverance, it's possible to create a life of purpose and achievement. Behind the success and vibrant public image of Taylor McFadden Robinson lay a private struggle that was intensifying with each passing day. Her marriage to Duncan Robinson Jr. had deteriorated significantly by early 2021, transforming from what once might have been a partnership into something increasingly dangerous. As Taylor's real estate career flourished and her entrepreneurial ventures gained momentum, tensions within her marriage escalated. According to those close to the situation, Duncan's behavior became increasingly controlling and unpredictable. While Taylor was building businesses and creating opportunities for her family, the atmosphere at home was growing more volatile. The relationship had reached a breaking point by March 2021. Court records reveal a pattern of intimidation and threatening behavior that prompted Taylor to make the difficult decision to separate from Duncan. This choice, made to protect herself and her children, would set in motion a series of events that exposed critical failures in the systems designed to protect domestic violence victims. On March 23, 2021, Taylor took the significant step of filing for an order of protection against Duncan. In her petition, she documented multiple alarming incidents that painted a clear picture of escalating danger. "Duncan came over to my home demanding the kids," she wrote. "He followed me after repeatedly being told to leave the premises." The petition detailed a pattern of boundary violations and increasingly aggressive behavior. Just 2 days earlier, on March 21, Taylor had been forced to call police. "When Duncan came to drop the kids off, he blocked my car in and entered my home without permission." This unauthorized entry followed a more violent incident on March 12, when, according to Taylor's statement, "Duncan broke my back door after kicking in repeatedly to attempt to enter my home." Perhaps most alarming was Taylor's account of what happened on March 15. "Duncan tried to run me over with his car." This incident, along with a confrontation on March 9 when he tried to fight the contractor on my property, demonstrated that Duncan's threatening behavior was extending beyond Taylor to include others around her. These documented incidents represented classic warning signs of escalating domestic violence, boundary violations, property damage, threats, and potentially lethal actions. Yet when Taylor presented this evidence to the court, seeking the protection that might have saved her life, her petition was denied. The judge's reasoning, as recorded in court documents, was for failure to prove facts of alleged abuse. Instead of granting the protective order, the court advised the parties to get attorneys and file divorce action, noting that differences appear to be over children. This dismissive response fundamentally misunderstood the dynamics at play and the very real danger Taylor faced. What the court failed to recognize is that the period of separation is statistically the most dangerous time for victims of domestic violence. When an abuser feels they are losing control over their partner, the risk of lethal violence increases dramatically. This psychological dynamic, often called separation violence, explains why leaving an abusive relationship is often the most dangerous moment for victims. When a relationship ends, particularly one characterized by controlling behavior, the abuser experiences a profound loss of power. For individuals who define their self-worth through control over others, this loss can trigger extreme reactions. The violence that follows isn't simply about anger. It's about reasserting dominance and punishing the partner for asserting independence. Taylor did exactly what experts advised. She recognized the danger, documented the threats, sought legal protection, and made plans to permanently leave the relationship through divorce. The system, however, failed to recognize what domestic violence specialists would have immediately identified as a high-risk situation. By denying Taylor's petition and reducing her concerns to mere differences over children, the court missed crucial warning signs that domestic violence experts are trained to identify. The scheduled divorce hearing, set for February 7, 2022, represented Taylor's attempt to follow the court's advice and legally end her marriage. It was a hearing that would never take place, as Duncan's escalating behavior would reach its tragic conclusion just weeks before that date. The breakdown of Taylor and Duncan's marriage reveals not just the failure of their relationship, but the failure of a system that couldn't recognize the danger until it was too late. January 2022 began as a promising new chapter for Taylor McFadden Robinson. Despite the ongoing stress of her deteriorating marriage, her professional life was thriving. As one of United Real Estate's top producing agents, Taylor had built an impressive client base and reputation in the Florence community. Her entrepreneurial ventures, Pretty Little Prince's Nail Salon and Moving Up LLC, were gaining momentum, and she was exploring opportunities to expand her business portfolio further. Colleagues noted that Taylor seemed energized by her professional success, often discussing plans to scale her businesses in the coming year. She had recently introduced her sons to entrepreneurship through their first vending machine purchase, demonstrating her commitment to building generational wealth and teaching Damari and Caden valuable business skills. These weren't just business achievements. They represented Taylor's determination to create stability and opportunities for her children, despite the challenges in her personal life. As January progressed, Taylor was also preparing for her final divorce hearing, scheduled for February 7, 2022. After months of separation and navigating the legal system, she was just weeks away from legally ending her marriage to Duncan Robinson Jr. Friends reported that while Taylor remained cautious about Duncan's unpredictable behavior, she was focused on the future and the freedom the divorce would bring. She had followed the court's directive to pursue divorce rather than protection, believing the legal process would eventually provide the separation and safety she sought. What Taylor couldn't know was that Duncan was making his own preparations during these same January days. While she was building businesses and caring for their children, court records would later reveal disturbing evidence of Duncan's activities in the days leading up to January 23. Though the specific details weren't initially disclosed by investigators, Assistant Solicitor Todd Tucker would later tell the court that evidence suggested premeditation and planning. Sunday, January 23, 2022 began like many others in the Live Oak Plantation neighborhood of Florence. Neighbors went about their morning routines, unaware of the tragedy about to unfold on Rice Planters Lane. Taylor was at home, likely attending to weekend tasks and spending time with her children. The approaching divorce hearing was just 15 days away. If you're finding this case as disturbing as we do, take a moment to share this video with someone who cares about domestic violence awareness. Your share could help someone recognize warning signs before it's too late. Shortly before 10 a.m., neighbors reported hearing a disturbance. What exactly transpired inside Taylor's home would later be pieced together through police investigation, forensic evidence, and, crucially, footage from Taylor's home surveillance system. This system, installed perhaps as a safety measure given Duncan's previous unauthorized entries, would become a silent witness to the day's tragic events. When police responded to reports of a shooting at Taylor's address, they found her deceased inside the home. Florence County Coroner Keith von Lutlecken would later confirm the cause of death as a gunshot wound to the head. Duncan Robinson Jr. was taken into custody later that same day. The surveillance footage, which would become key evidence in the case against Duncan, captured something so disturbing that Assistant Solicitor Todd Tucker would later describe it as a heinous crime. What the cameras recorded wasn't immediately disclosed to the public, but it was compelling enough that prosecutors felt confident pursuing the most serious charges: murder, first-degree burglary, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. The burglary charge revealed a critical detail. Duncan hadn't been invited into Taylor's home. He had forced his way in, just as he had done when he broke her back door in March 2021. This time, however, he came armed with more than threats. Perhaps most heartbreaking was a detail that would emerge later in court proceedings. Duncan committed this act in front of Damari and Caden, the two young boys Taylor had worked so tirelessly to protect and provide for. The surveillance system that Taylor had likely installed for protection had captured not just her final moments, but also the trauma inflicted on her children, witnesses to violence that would forever change their lives. What exactly did those cameras record in Taylor's final moments? And how would this evidence ultimately seal Duncan Robinson's fate? The tranquility of Florence's Live Oak Plantation neighborhood was shattered on January 23, 2022, when emergency calls reported a shooting at Taylor McFadden Robinson's residence on Rice Planters Lane. Florence County Sheriff's deputies responded immediately, arriving to a scene that would haunt even seasoned investigators. Inside the home, they discovered 29-year-old Taylor with a fatal gunshot wound to the head, while her two young sons, witnesses to the unimaginable, were physically unharmed but irrevocably changed by what they had seen. The investigation moved swiftly. Within hours, authorities identified Duncan Robinson Jr. as the primary suspect and launched a manhunt that concluded with his arrest later that same day. The Florence County Sheriff's Office initially charged Duncan with murder, first-degree burglary, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. Charges that reflected both the premeditated nature of the attack and the violation of Taylor's home. As investigators processed the crime scene, a critical piece of evidence emerged that would prove devastating to Duncan's defense. Taylor's home surveillance system had captured the entire incident. This digital witness provided investigators with unambiguous documentation of Duncan forcing his way into Taylor's home, armed with a firearm, and committing what Assistant Solicitor Todd Tucker would later describe in court as a heinous crime. The investigation revealed disturbing evidence of premeditation. Digital forensics uncovered that Duncan had conducted online searches related to disabling security systems and acquiring firearms in the weeks leading up to the murder. These digital breadcrumbs, combined with the surveillance footage, painted a picture not of a spontaneous act but of a calculated plan to harm Taylor, precisely the danger she had warned authorities about when seeking protection 10 months earlier. When the case moved to the courtroom, the emotional weight of Taylor's loss became painfully evident. During proceedings, Taylor's sister, Anastasia McFadden, delivered a powerful victim impact statement that resonated throughout the courtroom and later with the public.
The system has failed us. My sister asked for a restraining order, and the judge denied it. Please do not allow the system to fail us again.
Duncan Robinson didn't say anything during the hearing. The judge didn't set bond for him, so he'll stay in jail for the time being. Robinson's family tells me she was a wonderful woman, mother, and friend.
My sister Taylor, if you knew her, you loved her. She was all about family, all about unity. If she could help you, she would.
Her words highlighted not just the personal tragedy of Taylor's death, but the systemic failure that preceded it. A protection order denied, warnings unheeded, and a life that could have been saved had the legal system responded differently to Taylor's documented fears. As the legal process unfolded, prosecutors built a methodical case against Duncan. The evidence was overwhelming: surveillance footage of the murder itself, digital forensics revealing premeditation, the documented history of threats and property damage, and the timing of the attack just weeks before the scheduled divorce hearing. Each piece of evidence reinforced the narrative of a man unwilling to accept the end of his control over Taylor's life. Faced with this mountain of evidence, particularly the irrefutable surveillance footage, Duncan ultimately entered a guilty plea rather than face trial. On September 29, 2022, just over 8 months after Taylor's murder, Circuit Court Judge Michael Nettles sentenced Duncan Allen Robinson Jr. to life in prison without the possibility of parole for murder, plus 30 years for burglary and 5 years for the weapons charge, all to be served consecutively. The investigation and legal proceedings revealed the tragic intersection of domestic violence, systemic failures, and lethal consequences. Investigators noted that Taylor had done everything victims are advised to do. She documented the abuse, sought legal protection, separated from her abuser, and was proceeding with divorce. Yet the system designed to protect her had failed at a critical juncture when her protection order was denied. For the detectives, prosecutors, and victim advocates involved in the case, Taylor's murder represented not just an individual tragedy, but a systemic failure that demanded examination. The evidence they meticulously gathered not only secured justice for Taylor, but also highlighted the gaps in domestic violence response that allowed a documented threat to escalate to murder. As the legal case concluded with Duncan's sentencing, Taylor's family found a measure of justice, but it came too late to save the vibrant entrepreneur, devoted mother, and beloved community member, whose warnings had gone unheeded. The investigation had answered the question of who took Taylor's life, but the more profound question remained: how could this have been prevented? The news of Taylor McFadden Robinson's murder sent shockwaves through Florence, South Carolina, transforming private grief into collective mourning and eventually into purposeful action. As word spread of the circumstances surrounding her death, the community's response evolved from stunned disbelief to determined advocacy for change. Taylor's funeral service at New Ebenezer Baptist Church drew hundreds of mourners, family members, friends, clients, business associates, and community members touched by her life and disturbed by her death. The overflow crowd testified to Taylor's impact on her community. Colleagues from United Real Estate spoke of her professional dedication and infectious enthusiasm. Clients remembered her commitment to helping them find not just houses but homes. Friends recalled her generosity and vibrant spirit. Throughout these tributes, a common thread emerged. Taylor's life had been cut short not by chance, but by systemic failures that could and should have been prevented. In the weeks following Taylor's murder, the Florence community transformed grief into action. Local domestic violence advocacy organizations, particularly the Naomi Project, saw an unprecedented surge in volunteers and donations. Named after a biblical figure who experienced loss and found renewal, the Naomi Project had long provided support services for domestic violence survivors in the Florence area. Taylor's case brought new attention to their work and highlighted the critical gaps in the community's safety net for those facing intimate partner violence. "What happened to Taylor is tragically common," explained Marcia Davidson, executive director of the Naomi Project. "The most dangerous time for a victim is when they're trying to leave. Taylor did everything right. She documented the abuse, she sought legal protection, she was moving forward with divorce. The system failed to recognize the danger she was in, despite all the warning signs being present. Those warning signs? Escalating controlling behavior, property damage, threats, boundary violations, and particularly Duncan's attempt to run Taylor over with his car, represented textbook indicators of potential lethal violence, according to domestic violence experts. Dr. Eleanor Sampson, a psychologist specializing in domestic violence, noted that Taylor's case exhibited multiple high-risk factors that trained professionals are taught to identify. When someone tries to control their partner's movements, damages property, makes threats, and especially when they attempt physical harm like trying to hit someone with a vehicle, these are serious red flags, Dr. Sampson explained during a community forum organized in response to Taylor's death. In the context of separation, and the risk level increases dramatically. These weren't just differences over children as the court characterized them. They were warning signs of potentially lethal violence. The Florence business community, where Taylor had been a rising star, also responded with initiatives to raise awareness about domestic violence. Real estate agencies throughout the region implemented safety protocols for agents, particularly those working alone. Several businesses established scholarship funds in Taylor's name, focused on supporting entrepreneurship among young women and domestic violence survivors. Local media coverage of Taylor's case expanded beyond the initial crime reporting to examine the broader issues of domestic violence and systemic responses. The Florence Morning News ran an investigative series examining how protection orders are granted or denied in South Carolina, finding troubling inconsistencies in how judges evaluate evidence of potential danger. Through these collective responses, Taylor's tragic death became a catalyst for community awareness and action, transforming individual heartbreak into a movement for change that continues to grow and evolve. In the wake of Taylor McFadden Robinson's murder, South Carolina lawmakers were forced to confront the glaring gaps in the state's domestic violence protection system. Former Representative Caesar McKnight from Williamsburg County introduced House Bill 4949 in February 2022, legislation that could have potentially saved Taylor's life had it been in place when she sought protection from Duncan Robinson. The bill proposed a critical change to South Carolina's protection order process by allowing magistrates to issue temporary ex parte orders of protection in emergency situations. Under the proposed legislation, these emergency orders would remain in effect for 7 days, during which time a more thorough hearing could be scheduled to determine if a longer-term order of protection was warranted. This bill would give magistrates the power to issue temporary orders of protection immediately when someone is in danger, McKnight explained when introducing the legislation. In Taylor's case, she would have had immediate protection while waiting for the full hearing. The key innovation in HB 4949 was its recognition that domestic violence situations often require immediate intervention. The bill acknowledged that the existing system, which required victims to wait for a full hearing before receiving any protection, left them vulnerable during the most dangerous period when they were actively trying to leave their abusers. McKnight specifically cited Taylor's case when advocating for the bill, stating that he believed Robinson could have been saved if magistrates had the ability to immediately grant temporary orders of protection. The legislation gained bipartisan support, with co-sponsors including Representatives Hennigan, Allison, Trantham, Matthews, Erickson, Oramus, Bernstein, Brawley, Wetmore, Davis, R. Williams, and Thigpen. Despite initial momentum, the bill stalled in the House Judiciary Committee. As of January 2023, it had not yet reached the floor for debate, and its current status remains unclear. The legislative delay mirrors a troubling pattern in South Carolina's approach to domestic violence reform: recognition of problems, followed by hesitation to implement solutions. South Carolina has historically struggled with high rates of domestic violence. For years, the state ranked among the worst in the nation for women killed by men, often in domestic situations. While comprehensive reform legislation passed in 2015 strengthened penalties for domestic violence offenders and restricted firearm access for those convicted of domestic violence, Gaps in the protection order process remained unaddressed. Had HB 4949 been law when Taylor sought protection in March 2021, she could have received immediate temporary protection while awaiting her full hearing. Instead, she was left vulnerable after the judge denied her petition, citing failure to prove facts of alleged abuse and dismissing her concerns as differences over children. Joyce Ford, founder of the Naomi Project, a Florence-based advocacy group for domestic violence victims, emphasized the importance of such legislation. Taylor's case highlights exactly why we need a system that responds immediately to danger. When someone has the courage to seek help, the system should be ready to provide protection right away, not tell them to come back later. The legislative response to Taylor's death underscores both the recognition of systemic failures and the challenges in implementing meaningful change, a pattern that continues to leave domestic violence victims vulnerable during their most dangerous moments. Taylor McFadden Robinson's story represents both a profound tragedy and an urgent call to action. Her death illuminates the critical gaps in our systems designed to protect those facing domestic violence, gaps that persist despite decades of advocacy and reform efforts. When Taylor sought protection through legal channels, presenting documented evidence of escalating threats, the system failed to recognize the dangers she faced. This failure wasn't just a personal tragedy for Taylor and her family. It represents a systemic breakdown that continues to endanger countless others. The legacy Taylor leaves behind extends far beyond the circumstances of her death. Through her sons Damari and Caden, her entrepreneurial vision continues. The businesses she built, United Real Estate Success, Pretty Little Princess Nail Salon, and Moving Up, LLC, stand as testaments to her determination and business acumen. Her approach to motherhood, combining love with lessons in independence and entrepreneurship, continues to shape her children's future. Those who knew Taylor speak not primarily of how she died, but of how she lived, with purpose, joy, and unwavering commitment to creating opportunities for herself and her family. If this story has impacted you, please consider sharing it to raise awareness about domestic violence warning signs. Your share could help someone recognize danger before it's too late. For those currently facing domestic violence, resources are available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-723, provides 24/7 support. Local organizations like the Naomi Project in Florence offer shelter, legal advocacy, and counseling services. Remember that seeking help is not a sign of weakness but of courage, the same courage Taylor demonstrated throughout her life. As we reflect on Taylor McFadden Robinson's story, let us commit to remembering her, not just for the tragedy of her final day, but for the vibrancy of her 29 years. Let us honor her memory by working toward a world where protection orders are granted when needed, where warning signs are heeded, and where the systems designed to protect vulnerable individuals fulfill their purpose. Taylor was a daughter, sister, mother, entrepreneur, and friend whose life mattered and whose death should compel us to demand better. For her sons, for her memory, and for all those who continue to face the dangers she confronted with such courage.